This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Real Talkers, this is an episode we're grateful to have you here for, and one that you're going to want to catch from start to finish. I can tell you that much. In just a moment, Alberta's Education Minister Demetrios Nicolaides will join us. A lot of people, in particular in Alberta, but I think it's fair to say across the country, have been taking a look at recent UCP legislation. Danielle Smith's government introducing legislation that endeavors that promises to remove politics and ideology from Alberta classrooms. The question is, of course, what's prompting it? What role does government play when it comes to the administration or the day-to-day, the implementation of curriculum, when it comes to education and the role that our teachers play in helping young people better understand, or at least prepare to understand and navigate the world around them. We'll take a look at what happened, or thank God, what didn't happen in Iran since we last connected with you. Our most recent episode of Real Talk, we're taking a look at the President of the United States' promise to wipe out an entire civilization if Iran didn't meet a certain deadline to open the Strait of Hormuz. You know, because I feel like at least half the people on planet Earth were paying very close attention to what would happen when that Tuesday deadline struck, with countless Iranians lining bridges, standing around power plants, forming human shields to protect their infrastructure in what proved to be, at the very least, a very powerful demonstration of solidarity. While there's now terms and conditions driving a 2-week ceasefire and mixed reviews on whether or not Donald Trump got exactly what he was looking for. We'll take a look at that. And then, in partnership with NorthwestFest, this is Canada's longest running nonfiction film festival, we present a filmmakers roundtable that will lead off with iconic and legendary action star Dolph Lundgren. He's going to be joining us on the show in about 30 minutes from now. Filmmaker, producer Adam Scorgie will join Dolph, and then we'll talk to a couple of other filmmakers as well. Today is the day. If you're listening to this on April 8th, the day that we're streaming it, this is the day that NorthwestFest kicks off with an incredible lineup, more than 40 short and full feature-length documentary films. So this is an amazing episode. We're grateful to have you here, and quite frankly, friends, it would not be happening without the team at RapidXFinancial.com. If you pay attention to crypto, if Bitcoin is your thing, I don't have to tell you that the crypto world moves fast, and your trust in an exchange just simply cannot be a gamble. And that's why we're very proud to partner with RapidX Financial. This is a made-in-Alberta solution that's backed by the same experts behind those Rapid Cash ATMs that you've known, you've seen them, you've trusted them across Canada for more than 25 years. Well, RapidX is making it easy to get started with 3 different ways to trade. You can use the physical crypto ATMs. You see those popping up across the country. An over-the-counter desk for discrete, larger value trades, or if you could use a little human counsel, that's me. And then they've got the secure online platform. I'm showing you that now at RapidXFinancial.com. If you're there on the site and you're getting set to make an online e-transfer, a trade, you're going to want to make sure you have the promo code Ryan50. That's Ryan50. It's going to knock 50% off all fees. You can use it again and again and again. That's Ryan50, all one word. RapidX is secure. It's FinTrack registered, which is a huge deal. That needs to be a minimum standard. And critically, it's non-custodial, meaning that you will always control your keys. It's a big deal. It's RapidXFinancial.com, and the promo code is Ryan50. Well, you've likely heard the pitch by now, and if you're a regular tuner to Real Talk, you definitely have. You know that Alberta's government says that it wants to take politics and ideology out of the classroom. And you may go, well, yeah, I mean, it sounds perfectly reasonable, but here's the question. As we've heard from audience members in our live chat over the past few days, opposition NDP leader Naheed Nenshi, even a high school social studies teacher, department head, Dr. Jonathan Sherrick, joined us on the show to talk about this as well. They're wondering what counts as politics, what counts as just teaching, because that's exactly what's at the heart of Bill 25. The province says it's about neutrality. We'll see what the minister says in just a moment. Keeping classrooms focused on reading and writing and math, right? Teaching students how to think, not what to think. That's what we've heard from the UCP. The role of teachers is not activism, says the provincial government. So this introduces new rules about what teachers can say, what boards can advocate for, even what symbols can be displayed in schools by way of flags and otherwise. The goal, the government says, is balance, objectivity, common sense. But critics say that this could actually accomplish the opposite, that instead of removing politics, it's doubling down on it. It's centralizing power. It puts more control in the hands of government and risks chilling the exact conversations that help students learn to think critically about the world around them. It should be obvious. History is not neutral. Science isn't always politically convenient, and real life can be messy. So is this bill about protecting students from bias, or is it deciding which perspectives belong and which ones don't? Let's ask Alberta's Education Minister, the Honourable Demetrios Nicolaides, joining us live in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Thanks for being here. There's been lively discussion, to say the very least, in the province over the past number of days since Bill 25 was introduced. You say it removes ideology from classrooms. What's the definition of ideology? How do you know when it crosses the line?
Sure. Well, I just want to clarify something that was mentioned. You mentioned that the bill will limit what teachers can say in a classroom. That's not the case at all. Teachers, of course, have freedom of expression and have the full right to be able to say anything that they want. And the bill in no way limits a teacher's ability to say what they want. What we're doing is we're making a number of amendments to the Education Act to help foster critical thinking and to help ensure that diverse views are being explored and that students are being protected in their ability to express diverse views. Specifically, Section 16 of the Act is being amended to encourage a wide range of perspectives and ideas, foster critical thinking, and support the acquisition of knowledge and skills. In addition, Section 33, which outlines the responsibilities of a school board, includes a number of amendments that will ensure that a school board is not taking a position or issuing a statement on a social or political issue or cause, and that the delivery of education is done in a manner that's neutral and free from any personal bias.
Minister, I'm not sure that teachers seriously feel like they can say whatever they want. That's not really the feeling that this legislation gives off, or the tone that it sets. But we've also heard from a ton of teachers that say, I'm not trying to say whatever I want. I'm not trying to infuse politics and ideology into the classroom. Were there specific instances or examples that landed on your desk where you said enough is enough? These are crossing the line?
Yeah, I do get emails and texts and phone calls from parents all the time that are concerned with what they believe to be some kind of bias or leaning that is influencing instruction. And there were some specific notable examples over the course of the last few years that have really raised some concerns for me. There was one in June of 2023 where a Muslim girl at a junior high school in Edmonton decided not to go to school one day because the school was organizing some pride activities that day, and she believed it conflicted with her faith. And after returning to school, she was berated by her teacher, and her teacher told her, quote, "We believe that people can marry whoever they want. That's the law. And if you don't think that should be the law, you can't be Canadian. You don't belong here. And I mean it."
What?
It's very damaging.
A teacher said that to a student?
It was recorded back in 2023, and it's very concerning, especially to a student at that age. This is a junior high. I can't imagine how that individual feels. And of course, in January, there was an incident at a school in Fort Saskatchewan where a teacher was mocking people from Fort McMurray and other people who support the oil and gas sector. But these are some of the things that have really raised alarm bells for me. And I know that the vast majority of teachers are incredible professionals and don't bring any personal bias into the classroom. But we have seen some of these examples and they are very concerning. And I want students to know that they're protected in their views, in their opinions. And again, I believe that we should focus on teaching students how to think and not what to think.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you that teaching students how to think is like probably the most important mandate that the education system has, that any individual teacher would have. I mean, on that example with a Muslim student and pride, I mean, that's preposterous if that's true. That sounds to me like a fireable scenario for the teacher. I'm not sure if it qualifies as racist. I'll let other people decide that, but it's obviously bonkers if the comments are accurate. I don't know that represents education professionals writ large. The situation in Fort Saskatchewan was an interesting one. You know, I mean, you've got a right-wing influencer encouraging people to have their kids record snippets of what's being presented in class. They release a limited sample size, about 90 seconds of an hour-long lesson. I've heard many people claim, including people from that school, that the teacher is speaking very candidly in front of social studies students and parodying people and trends and perspectives from across the political spectrum and highlighting extremes. I'm not sure that was an attack on the people of Fort McMurray, and it certainly was taken out of context. At least that's what we've been told from people close to that teacher. You don't encourage people to record teachers in class and pass them along to sensational right-wing TikTok stars, do you?
No, and I think that this is, where we want to ensure that we establish some clear guardrails. And the amendments that we're making, again, are to specific sections of the Act. One of them relates to the responsibilities of a school board. And in that section that outlines the responsibilities of a school board, the amendments that we're making will provide new responsibilities that will, for example, ensure that programs of study are focused on academic rigor, intellectual integrity, and essential knowledge, will ensure that a school board is focused on delivering educational programming in a fair, neutral manner that's free from personal bias, and will also provide a new responsibility to school boards to ensure that students are free to express any perspective or ideas at a school that is, of course, in compliance with the Code of Conduct, so that they have the ability to challenge a particular perspective or an idea. That's an essential element to help foster critical thinking. And that's what we're looking to do here. We don't want school boards taking positions or wading into social or political issues or causes. We want school boards to be focused on the delivery of education and helping set up our students for success.
Is this kind of like the three pillars, I suppose, that people will see on evidence in Canada today that appear to me to be polarizing to certain degrees, and I'm sure I'll get pushback for even putting it that way. But pride would be a big one. Obviously, there's been visible support for people in Palestine relating to what's happening in Gaza, and we've seen some flags flown, which is what caught my attention, the flag element of this legislation. And then the Every Child Matters, the orange flags, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation really appears to drive some people apart. Are these all fitting examples? Is this what we're talking about? Are those some of the flags that would be banned from flying in schools in Alberta?
Sure. Well, the Education Act already has a requirement that school divisions must fly the Canadian flag at each school site operated by the school division. And so we're expanding that section to provide a little bit more clarity. We're also stipulating that the Alberta flag must also be flown. And we're also introducing regulation-making authority because there are much more there are more nuances and other types of exceptional circumstances or occasions where different flags may need to be displayed at a school or for a particular occasion. And so we will detail all of that out in regulation that will be forthcoming should the legislation pass. So it'll give us an opportunity in the regulation to establish some clear definitions, what constitutes a flag, what is the definition of that, and what other types of exemptions or other situations might be permitted. So that'll all come in the coming weeks.
Jillian's watching our live stream presented by California Closets. She's in our chat today. She's a teacher. She says no teacher took this bill as increasing our freedom. We've heard from, we get a ton of emails to talk at RyanJesperson.com. Teachers have talked about the chilling effect that they're feeling here, that they're nervous to even teach the lessons that are in front of them, wondering how they, one message in particular memorably said, how do I both sides genocides, or how do I both sides world conflicts? Are we taking these big decisions, the gut instincts, the strategy out of the hands of the people that are trained and best equipped to deliver them?
I don't believe so. The changes that we're making to the Education Act will require a school board to ensure that the delivery of educational programming is impartial, fair, and free from personal bias. That's the entirety, word for word, of the requirement that we're imposing on school authorities.
Minister, but you and I both have our bias. I've never believed that bias is a dirty word, and I bet that you and I would align on some stuff, and I bet that we would vociferously disagree on some stuff, but I bet that we could learn a little bit from each other, and I bet that we could advance a dialogue, just like we're doing here today. What's wrong with that happening in the classroom? I don't understand how you pull bias out of any situation, quite frankly.
Well, when it comes to the delivery of programming, that has to be free from any personal bias that the teacher or instructor has. Because, of course, and you're right, everyone has their bias, absolutely, and everyone has their own perspective. But when we're delivering education and educating students, we have to take a step back and remove our own personal bias from that environment to allow students to develop their own views and their own opinions. That's essential to help them challenge the material, to help them develop critical thinking. And so that's the requirement that we've established there, is to make sure that there are no personal biases coming into the equation when we're delivering education to kids.
How much of this was prompted by parents, by special interest groups, potentially by religious groups? Was the government, were you hearing, were you being lobbied? Was it significant?
I haven't been lobbied by any religious organizations as it relates to these provisions. But I have been hearing, as I mentioned, going back to 2023, that one example I provided, since that time, and that occurred shortly after I was appointed minister. And I've continued to hear concerns from parents about these types of examples or other types of situations, school assignments or conversations that they believe don't have a place in the classroom. And so
can you give it, and I'm curious to hear an example of an assignment. I'd be curious to know what that would look like.
Yeah, I recall one that compared different governments in Alberta and in Canada to Nazi dictatorship regimes, and things of that nature. And I don't have any specific example of an assignment offhand, but I do receive a number of them continuously from parents. And sometimes a particular parent may think that a assignment or a conversation is really biased, and that's their own view. Others might view that differently. But I think it's important we establish just some clear guardrails, which, as I mentioned, is to ensure that when we're delivering education, we're doing it in a fair, neutral manner that's free from any personal bias, and we're focused on the acquisition of knowledge and the fostering of critical thinking.
It appears, throughout your tenure as education minister, it's been a very dynamic portfolio, to say the very least, and there's been no shortage of legislation around kids in sport and parental notification around pronouns and what books can be in school libraries and now in public libraries as well. Of course, there was the teacher strike, the notwithstanding clause to order them back to class. Now you've got Bill 25. Talking about bias and ideology and politics in the classroom, and what flag? The list goes on. At what point does it stop? Do you get to a point where you start to potentially think about whether or not, like a hockey coach might do, you lose the room, you start to do permanent damage to the morale or maybe the staying power of Alberta's teachers? Is that on your radar at all?
Well, many of the amendments that we're making in the Education Act under this bill are also being done to respond to teacher concerns as well. One of the changes that we're making relates to certain language that exists within the Act, and we're instituting a new provision that schools must be safe and caring environments that foster and maintain respectful and responsible behaviors. Now, those words are put in for a very particular reason because we've heard significant concerns from teachers about violence and aggression in the classroom. And I believe we have to take the opportunity that we have through Bill 25 to make amendments to ensure that we're maintaining responsible and respectful behavior. We're also making other amendments to the Education Act to draw a more firm line when it comes to violence in the classroom. Because I've heard loud and clear from teachers that they are concerned about violence and aggression and sometimes feel powerless to be able to challenge it. And so there's more work that needs to happen. We need to update our standards on special education and continue to roll out complexity teams to schools. But I believe it's a good opportunity to amend some of the language to make it clear that respectful and responsible behavior of students will be an important variable moving forward.
Minister, I want to credit Ambustion here, who's in our live chat powered by Park Power, for making a contribution to the show, wanting me to ask you just in follow-up about your meetings that were widely reported, including here I'll reference the St. Albert Gazette. They're doing a great job. But meetings with yourself and the Premier, as I understand it, in February with, was it 17 or 18 different groups, including Parents for Choice in Education, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom, a political consulting firm, Western Impact, and other private and religious schools, home education associations represented there as well. I mean, it sounds to me like maybe not technically lobbying, but obviously you've heard their concerns, and it appears, whether or not it's correlation or causation, that the bill released pretty much right after those meetings. Can you elaborate on what was discussed there and any promises that were made?
No promises were made, and there wasn't any correlation between what was discussed at that meeting and this bill. As I mentioned, one of the examples that I referenced goes back to 2023, when I was soon appointed minister. That has, brought this to my attention. But I meet with everybody, and I noticed the article didn't highlight my meetings with the Alberta Teachers Association, Public School Boards Association, Alberta School Boards Association, or other organizations.
Yeah, but there's, Minister, you and I both know there's a huge difference there, though, right? Like the Alberta Teachers Association representing Alberta's teachers, the Alberta School Board Association representing the school boards, like the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms or Parents for Choice in Education. That they don't fit that bill. They're completely different, right? They're special interest third parties that are representing specific perspectives, many of them based on, and I'm not piling on religion here, I'm just calling a spade a spade. Their religious conviction is driving their advocacy. You can't compare those two groups.
Well, as I said, I meet with everybody, and I think it's important to listen to all Albertans. We're a very diverse province. We have a diversity of views, and I think it's important for me to listen to individuals that maybe have a concern that they want to express, or opinion they want to share. I don't, of course, act on every opinion that's shared with me, but I think it's important to hear them to help me formulate a stronger view and interpretation of what Albertans are looking for and what we need in our education system. And that's, as I mentioned, paralleled with meeting with the Alberta Teachers Association, Alberta School Councils Association, and other organizations as well.
Okay, I've got to ask you this in closing before we thank you for your time. And this is always a question we got to ask politicians. In a world where the official opposition forms the next government in Alberta, if a future government defines ideology differently than you and the UCP does, would you be comfortable with them having the same powers that this bill creates?
Well, the bill doesn't define specifically ideology, and I wouldn't have a problem with a future government keeping this legislation in place because, as I mentioned, it outlines that the delivery of education is to be impartial, fair, and free from personal bias. I'm not sure why a future government would want to remove that type of characterization. It also requires the school boards to deliver high quality, academically challenging instruction. It also ensures that students are free to express perspectives or ideas. So I'm not sure why any government would want to remove those provisions from the Education Act.
All right. Yeah. I mean, they may approach it differently, or that may never happen. Who knows? It's a hypothetical exercise. I appreciate your availability, Minister, per usual. You've never said no to an interview request. I appreciate that. Thanks for doing it.
All the best, of course.
Yeah, you got it. That's Alberta's Education Minister, the Honorable Demetrios Nicolaides, in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Obviously, our live chat, powered by Park Power, banging right now. You've got a lot to say. Jameson is watching us live on Facebook right now. That's our live stream. Thanks to California Closets. You can find us on 7 different social media platforms. Jameson says, if Minister has met with everybody and has, a lot of emails and phone calls, why are there so few specific examples? A lot of you were pushing back on that audio that was captured out of the Fort Saskatchewan classroom. This was the one. What was it, Johnny? Me no happy, me no rich. Was that the statement I think that the teacher made?
I got a T-shirt that says it.
You got a T-shirt that says. I think you made it more famous than the teacher did.
Me no angry if me not.
Yeah, so whatever it was. Parodying the classic stereotypical right-wing conservative. Of course, it's a shame. You know what we should do? The teacher, I will let you know, has officially declined a Real Talk interview request. But I wanted to invite him on and get the left-wing equivalent. Like, what's your parody of the stereotypical left-winger? And I'm sure that it would be just as entertaining. Do we all agree that if it's true, what was reported to the minister a couple of years ago, a Muslim student being told that gay marriage is legal in Canada, and that's the way that it is, and if you don't like it, you should leave, is if that's real, and if that's true, that's nuts, we can all agree. But I'm not sure that that's characteristic. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact that's not characteristic of how more than 50,000 Alberta teachers are approaching their jobs in the province of Alberta or anywhere in Canada as a result. I think that's probably safe to say. Crystal is watching us in our chat, says teachers have overwhelmingly expressed concern around this, but he's not acting on those. Aaron says if we're looking for diversity, let us be diverse, right? Mike via Facebook says diversity of views, just not in a classroom. Mike says that's what we're looking at in Alberta right now. Tracy says critical thinking was introduced like more than 15 years ago in higher grades. And then in 2012 across the board for all grades, infused into all subject areas. She says we've seen really good assignments for students. You have to have that. You have to have that, right? In this day and age, when we're talking to young people, when we're talking to adults for that matter, when we're talking to senior citizens, when we're talking to people across the age spectrum and across every demographic, it's not just helping people understand the world around them by way of current events or developments or news stories or headlines. It's also about like media literacy and understanding information sources and what's credible and what's not, and what's misinformation and disinformation or what's verified information. I mean, we have to start from the very beginning, right? We have to help teachers work in an environment, I think, where education and evidence and empathy, where it can all coexist. And who would ever argue against teaching students how to think? It's the teaching students what to think that jumps out at me. And I know that education, like many other areas, is wrought with gray areas, right? Like there's certain subjects. There are definitely interpretations on almost any subject, I bet, where opinions and perspectives would vary in the classroom, and that may include the teacher. And one of the most important jobs of a teacher is to be able to set aside their personal conviction on a matter and hear out their students, platform their students, as some of you would say, encourage students to elaborate on their ideas, to respectfully disagree with one another, because that's what they're going to be doing in practice in real life for the rest of their lives. And if we're not seeing it modeled in homes, and I bet that we're seeing it modeled in most homes, but not all, where else are these students going to see it? Where else are they going to understand and implement that driving force that we talk about on this show all the time, which is that perpetual state of curiosity, seeking to understand one another? You can let us know what you think on this. Send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. You can also rip through our most recent episodes. You can find them on wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on our YouTube channel. Thanks for subscribing there. We've spoken to Naheed Nenshi on this. He was spitting fire about it. Obviously, he was all kinds of motivated. He was really focusing on the flags and the naming of schools, not limited to that, but that's where you'll find his comments, including on our most recent social posts at Real Talk RJ. You can see the short from that interview. Dr. Jonathan Sherrick joined us as well, and I encourage you to check that out. This guy is a career-long social studies teacher. He's a department head as well, and he talked about social studies in particular as obviously a very important and a very exciting field. The guy, this is his calling, his life's work. You get the sense when you're talking to him, but also this is where these challenges and these gray areas would most manifest themselves, right? Social studies. If you're politicizing math, you're probably not much of a math teacher unless it's an anecdote, which really works. But social studies, maybe biology, I can think of that as well. Science classes. I mean, how do we discuss, or how do you teach in an Alberta classroom right now the origin of the universe? As an example, where does science and evidence factor in? Where do people's personal beliefs factor in about the root of humankind? If you're sorting through this as an educator, if you're a principal listening to this, if you're a parent that has felt that bias has polluted your child's classroom, we'd love to hear from you as we continue this conversation. You can email the show anytime to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Action star Dolph Lundgren still coming up on the show. Of course, we're going to take a look at what didn't happen, thank God, in Iran within the last 24 hours. More to come on this episode of Real Talk, but right now we'll break for a message presented by the Alberta Teachers Association. When 51,000 spoke up for Alberta students, what did the government do? Well, they suspended teachers' charter rights to collective bargaining. They made it harder for Alberta teachers to speak out for students at school, to speak out for what they need. They did it by invoking the notwithstanding clause, and they didn't have to. Alberta's teachers want you to know that the government had other options, and that's why the ATA, the Alberta Teachers Association, is taking the government to court to get teachers' charter rights restored. They won't stop advocating for students because it shouldn't be wrong to speak up for kids. This is a message from the Alberta Teachers Association. Hey friends, we're getting into last call territory. If you take a look at Full House Lottery, that's fullhouse.ca. I want to let you know that there's two deadlines coming. Number one, a surprise deadline tonight. And then, of course, we have a deadline coming up on April 15th. You can check it all out on fullhouse.ca. This is the Full House Lottery page. This is an incredible opportunity for you to win big and change lives. I mean, somebody has to win. Is it going to be you? The Legacy Signature Dream Home. Someone's getting the keys. That's valued at over $2.45 million. They've got the Dream Hall, the F-150, and a Moomba boat, or you could just take $200,000 cash. A Dream Reno voucher from Legacy Signature Homes. A Dream Outdoor Oasis voucher from Green Tree Landscaping. Plus vehicles, cash, gift cards, a 50-50 extra jackpot that as of right now is sitting at well over $1.2 million and more. You can go online to fullhouse.ca. You can check out the show notes, by the way, for a link that will let you know that you heard about this on Real Talk. We'd appreciate that. You can check out the Dream Home, buy your tickets in person, or you can buy them by phone at 780-424-6161. That's Full House Lottery online at fullhouse.ca. Hey, opera lovers, thrilled to let you know that Edmonton Opera has officially kicked off its season, and you have a chance to check out an absolutely iconic production as Edmonton Opera presents Siegfried, one of the most thrilling chapters of the Ring cycle. This epic production runs May 25th through the 31st at the Citadel Theatre. This is a bold, larger-than-life story filled with adventure, magic, and unforgettable music by Richard Wagner, featuring a fearless young hero, a legendary sword, and even a dragon. So whether you're an opera lover or maybe you're totally new to it, this is a spectacular night out you're not going to want to miss. And you can get your tickets right now online at edmontonopera.com. That's May 25th through the 31st at the Citadel Theatre. Siegfried, edmontonopera.com. If you're hoping to keep money in your pocket, go green, contribute to your families, or maybe the world's sustainable energy goals, today is a perfect day to check out Kuby Energy. That's KUBY.ca. You can get a free solar quote on their website, and if it works for you, the numbers that they're crunching, their engineers will get working on putting your project into motion. That way you get on their spring installation schedule. You get the panels on your roof ASAP. You can build your quote online. Again, that's Kuby.ca, KUBY.ca. They're working on farms. They're working on office towers, convention centers, and thousands of residences across Western Canada. That's Solar by Kuby, proudly presenting Positive Reflections, the first episode of every week right here on Real Talk. And before we get back to the show, a quick reminder that Athabasca University is always open for applications, and students are furthering their post-secondary goals 12 months a year. Athabasca University is Canada's open university with world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. These numbers will knock your socks off. You can check them out yourself at athabascau.ca. You know that of their more than half a million program and course alumni from more than 100 countries, more than 92% of AU alum say that they're in a job related to their field of study. More than 9 in 10. And more than 94% of them say that they're satisfied with the quality of their Athabasca University education. You can select your path today. Learn more about student supports and other angles on the AU Advantage by visiting the website athabascau.ca. All right, well, this is a pretty big deal for this show as we welcome back to the Real Talk studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse in downtown Edmonton, an award-winning producer, the creative force behind some of the most impactful feature documentaries in Canadian history, including Dolph Unbreakable. But we are here to welcome one of the world's greatest and most recognizable action stars. Before we get to him, Adam Scorgie, it's nice to have you back. Thanks for making time for us.
Of course. Always a pleasure coming on the show. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, buddy. NorthwestFest kicks off today. We're talking to everybody on the 8th of April, and I know a lot of people have your Dolph documentary circled on their calendars. Friends, you know him.
As they should.
Well, let's get to it. This is the guy who looked unbreakable, right? Towering and silent and lethal. Rocky IV was where the world met him, probably as one of his most iconic performances, one of the most iconic villains in film history, safe to say, the embodiment of Cold War tension and power and precision and no weakness, but that's the character. And we're about to talk to the man, because behind decades of blockbuster roles, behind the physique, a doctorate in chemical engineering, the global fame, Dolph Lundgren has been fighting a very different kind of battle, one that doesn't come with choreographed punches or a script. And he's here to talk about it ahead of the screening of Dolph Unbreakable at NorthwestFilmFest. What a pleasure to welcome to Real Talk the legendary Dolph Lundgren. Welcome to the show. Thanks for making time for us.
Thanks, guys. Nice to be on the show. Thanks.
Yeah,
good to see you, Dolph.
Well, we've been looking forward to this, Dolph, for a long time. This is an interesting, I would imagine, and a totally different kind of project for you. You've starred in more than 80 films through your storied career, but none other have been focusing on you personally and some of your toughest moments. How did you wrap your mind around the pitch, and why did you agree to do the project?
Well, as you get to a certain age, of course, you start looking back on your life. And, anybody does that, whether you're an actor or not. So when Adam and his team came to me, it was about 5 years ago, I think, or maybe 5-6 years ago. This is right during COVID, actually. I think it was right after COVID. Yeah, I thought it was a good idea to do something. And I already had a kind of interesting life, of course, between the martial arts, engineering, and getting in the movie business, living in different places around the world. And also I had this sort of childhood trauma I was dealing with, which I'd been sort of speaking about in on a TED Talk and a few other places. And, little did I know that, my biggest kind of battle was about to come, which was with kidney cancer. And that started shortly after we started shooting, which we started in 21. I was doing 2 movies in London. I was doing Expendables 4 and the sequel to Aquaman. And I'd been diagnosed actually the same week as I was getting engaged to my current wife. I was diagnosed that my cancer was back. I had it already. I had some surgery in 2015. So the cancer had come back, but I kind of did another surgery, and I was kind of hoping it was going to go away. So I didn't really tell Adam or anybody, but obviously about a year later or so, it started getting pretty bad. And I told him, that I'd rather, we have to speak about this because there's a chance I may not be around for the premiere of this doc. So it got to kind of a serious place. And the doc it's a bit of a celebration, obviously, of success, and also, of this fight that I went through, a couple of fights, and this is one of them. But it's a pretty hard-hitting doc. I think it's very personal, and a lot of people have seen it quite like it because a lot of things these days kind of sanitized, and people, especially in my position, they're reluctant to speak about anything, anything negative, because you think it's going to influence your career or your future, or your image. So I think I decided to speak about it, and it made me feel good to, like they say, you're only as sick as your secrets. So I'm trying to express that. So that's what the doc is about. There you go. That's kind of my side of how it got started and why I decided to do it.
I love that you're only as sick as your secrets. Was full transparency always the agreement, Dolph? Like, did you consider holding any parts of the cancer journey back, or was full transparency your commitment from day one?
Well, it was, but I didn't want to bring up the cancer because it's a serious life and death situation, and obviously you're opening a can of worms there once you start talking about it. So I decided not to speak about it for a while until like I said, until it got serious, and I had to speak about it because also I was losing weight, so I didn't look that good. I'm sure the production team saw that I was changing, so I brought it up at that point. But I've always been transparent about it. I've done other interviews regarding this. I'm involved in some charities and some organizations, the Kidney Cancer Association. I don't mind speaking about it because I think, me speaking up about it means a lot to other people who are having the same problem, and we're fighting something that they may be reluctant to share because, there's a stigma about that, and that it's, too depressing, or people just sit there and suffer alone, a lot of times, or maybe with their close family. But I think it's important that everybody knows that there are other people out there who also care about you.
Dolph, you can't see it, but we have a live chat here powered by Park Power, and the minute that you came up on the screen, it just absolutely exploded. And Goramu just says, He-Man! And 80s Fanify says, holy shit! And Ben says, absolutely fantastic! And Sharon, just in all caps, just says, Dolph! And everybody's talking, True North Girl says, what a good actor. I mean, people adore you. People have loved you as the hero. People have just respected the hell out of you as the villain. What role has public support played in your cancer journey, or what have you realized? Have you had kind of an epiphany or something significant land with you emotionally or otherwise as a result of opening up and sharing this vulnerability?
Yeah, all of the above. I mean, I think that a lot of characters I've played have been kind of stoic and kind of, as if you're a soldier, you don't want to be whining and complaining. I mean, you have to just kick ass and fight the battle. And that's what my characters have been doing, but I think, I can show another humanity, another side of myself in this doc, because the doc is also not just about cancer. It's about me growing up. It's about how did I get into show business, and it features people like Stallone and Arnold, friends of mine, Jean-Claude Van Damme, other actors, and a lot of kind of iconic footage and moments from a lot of movies, that I've been in 80, 90 movies, whatever it is now. So, what I have realized over the years is that, when I set out to do this, I kind of did it more for selfish reasons. Like I wanted to express myself. I had a lot of trauma. My dad was quite violent, so I had that to deal with. And it took me a while to realize that, one reason I think I've been doing this is to connect with other people, to try to make them feel something, to entertain other people, kind of enlighten their everyday lives, which may not be as exciting perhaps as being an actor, being a movie star, but I feel like, I get that love back now from people as I get older. Like you said, people are, I realize that it's been, 99% positive, whether you're a good guy, whether I've been a good guy or bad guy, people have taken those characters to heart. And I think that makes me feel really good. And it makes me feel like that was part of my purpose, which I didn't know when I was a young actor. I just kind of did what was in front of me. I didn't realize I was going to be, signing 8x10s, 40 years later, quoting these, one-liners that I spoke back in the 80s. I didn't realize it was going to carry that far,
Well, Dolph, you're probably the star of maybe the most famous gif on the internet, which is "if he dies, he dies." I mean, that's arguably the greatest movie line of all time. We've got JJ Needs a Nap in our live chat. He says, Dolph Lundgren, he says, please tell him my dad and I always thought that his character in Rocky IV was the real hero of the film. Forced to fight, shows up, does the dang thing, and still hot as hell. JJ says, I always loved Dolph. Adam, you've told a ton of compelling stories. You were in here talking to us about your Jordan Tutu documentary about hockey and the challenges of him growing up in the North. What was it about the Dolph story? Like, how does a film like this come to, past the idea or the brainstorm stage? When did you know you had something big, and what was the feeling when Dolph agreed to work with you on it?
Well, that was, like most of the fans in the chat right now, I was a huge fan of Dolph, right, for the same movies. I love Masters of the Universe. I loved, his character, Ivan Drago. But then when I got to meet Dolph and seeing how sincere and genuine he was, and that he was ready to open up. And as a documentary filmmaker, when he was like, there's nothing off the table, and Dolph was very raw and very honest and candid right from the get-go, you knew you had something special, right? And that's when I knew we were going to get into it. And I can talk about when he revealed the cancer. It was an emotional day for us because we were in Sweden filming and we just really bonded. Like, there's times when you start getting into production, we're like, oh, we're really building a good relationship. And then him and Emma text me and they're like, hey, we got to meet tonight at 7:30. It's very important. And I'm going to the team. I'm like, guys, did we do something today? Did we get in shot? I thought we had a great day of shooting, like not knowing what it is, thinking we're in trouble or we didn't do something right. And everybody's like, no, I thought it went great. And then we come in and Dolph is his normal. He's really welcoming and he's like, let's have a beer, let's chat. And then I'm waiting for it. And Emma goes, Dolph, tell him. And I'm like, okay, we're in trouble. What do we do? What do we have to overcome? And then he's like, guys, I'm actually really sick, right? The cancer's gotten worse. We need to step up production. I don't know if I'm going to be here in the end. I don't know how I'm going to look. You probably noticed I'm losing weight. And then all of a sudden, me and the director, like, we're welling up in tears because at this point, you built a relationship. You care about the character. It isn't just making a film. And you're going on this journey with him. We're like, okay, shit, we're going to get production. And then, I don't give away spoilers, but obviously Dolph's still here. They found something and he got a second opinion. He pushed through. He kept fighting, which is Dolph's fighting spirit, not just his characters. That's why he's able to do them so well, is that when you're going through all these tests constantly and the medications and the treatments, there's many people that feel like giving up. And Dolph didn't want to. He's like, no, I got a friend that said I should go for another opinion. And they found an anomaly and they were able to treat it with a basic medication that he could get all over. And now, knock on wood, Dolph is cancer-free. And living in, there's another chance for a new adventure with him and his wife. So It is these kind of things that you don't plan for in a film. But now that we've gone on this journey with him, like Dolph and I will be forever connected with his story, which is incredibly powerful. It already won the Ampy Award for Best Documentary this year. And I really, really hope a lot of people get a chance to come see it in a theater. It's the best place to see it on the 14th with NorthwestFest at 7 p.m. I will be there. Unfortunately, the legend himself, he's here today because he's going to be on a movie set, so he can't be there. But here in spirit and sporting in studio today.
I love it. Dolph, that must have been obviously a tough day. You shared with us a little bit about that, about letting the team know about the cancer journey. And I guarantee you that a decent number of the people that watch this interview may not even be 100% familiar with your entire IMDb profile or with the 80 or 90 films that you've done. But the fact that you're a very prominent and well-recognized movie star, an action hero, kind of the pillar of strength, who has experienced moments, I would imagine, of great weakness or feeling powerless, the energy being sucked out of you, an unfamiliar feeling maybe. And they'll be curious to know where you found strength in those moments. What did strength look like to you, or what has strength looked like through your cancer journey?
Good question.
It's a good question. Yes, obviously, I started in a very vulnerable place when I was a kid. My dad was, a big guy like me. He was an officer, an army officer, and he was quite violent with me and my mom. So I took a bunch of beatings when I was a kid. When I was small, like maybe 5 years old, 4 or 5, maybe started when I was about 3 or 4. I can't remember exactly, but so I went through that kind of near-death experience when you're a little child and somebody big like me comes in to beat you up. You don't know if you're going to make it. I learned that in therapy later. You get PTSD, and it took me. Then I developed some kind of allergies, probably because of that, because of the abuse, and then I kind of fought my way out of that and became athletic. I got into ice hockey first. Like everybody in Sweden, Canada too, played hockey. Then I got into judo, karate, and I kind of wanted to feel strong. I wanted to build myself up, to feel powerful, to feel like I could fight back, like I could take care of myself. So I fought my way out of kind of a hole before once when I was about 12, 13, 14. And interestingly, then I used that strength to become a martial arts champion, and then later, of course, to become an action star and be in all these movies and play these sort of invisible characters. So then 40 years later, I find myself getting weak again for other reasons. Not my dad, but now I have this disease, and I kind of, you get cut down to size where you are vulnerable, where you are suffering, where you don't have the strength. And, during the treatment, it's like being in a foxhole and you're being shot at and you're firing back. You're not really thinking too much. You don't have time to get depressed or think about it too much, or really, it doesn't, your body is a fight to flight mode to some degree. So I'd been there before too, but what happened was when the treatment started working and then you start realizing what has happened, that you've been close to death, that you're very vulnerable, and then your body has this reaction of like it's sort of reacting after the treatments are done. You get very weak. It took me like a year or two to get back in shape. I thought it was going to be a year. It took me 2 years, and that's when I became depressed, kind of suicidal. And they say it's a natural progression where a lot of these guys come back from fighting a war and they've survived and their buddies get killed, and then they have a big party, balloons, the guy made it. What does he do 2 weeks later?
Yeah.
Puts a gun in his mouth, right? And you're like, what the fuck? What happened? He made it. Well, the body is interesting, like it has its own life. So I went through all of that, and I think what did make me, be able to fight it was, I think, I had that experience once before as a kid, and then through my whole life, through martial arts, academics, and also in the movie business, I've always been a fighter, and I don't like to give up, and I think having that attitude and being fortunate to have loving people around me, like my wife, my kids, you know, even people like Adam and the crew. I mean, people who really cared about me. That was just gave me a lot of strength too.
That's going to mean something to hear that, Adam.
It's almost bringing me to tears, and yeah, it is. You go on this journey with someone like Dolph, and it's why I'm addicted to doing unscripted. Is that the connection Dolph and I have, and his wife Emma, like it. You can't do that on a movie set, right? We've been in the trenches for years. We battled through COVID. We saw his cancer. We saw him get really sick, and we saw him get better. It was an emotional day, and it's special. It's what makes the unscripted, I find, a more personal connection.
Dolph, in closing, this is about as personal as it gets. I just want to thank you for kind of sharing your heart here. But you did talk about experiencing suicidal thoughts, and just as an audience here and a show with a significant number of men and younger men that listen, and we know that I mean, disproportionately more men die by suicide by a wide margin than women, and we do our best not to shy away from that subject matter and to talk openly and honestly about it. What was one of the mechanisms or the tools that you discovered aside from your support circle that has really helped you on that journey and that has helped contribute to the reality that you're here with us talking today? What might you be able to say to others that are experiencing some of those same dark thoughts?
Well, I think two things came to mind. One was that I kept being physically active and working out, because that gives you that adrenaline, it gives you the positive hormones, the endorphins and so forth from training. I try to do anything, even when I was at the hospital for 2 weeks. I get up and go for a walk in the morning, had a cup of coffee and go for a walk, even if I was quite weak for a while. For a while there, I always try to do something, keep the routine going. And then I was also lucky enough to be introduced to a therapist. It's called a cancer survivors therapy. So it's any therapy is good, but obviously somebody to talk to who's an expert, because it's like if you have a toothache, you don't get a drill out and try to get in there yourself and get rid of it. You talk to a specialist and like, hey, how do I fix this? And it's the same when you're going through something like a depression or suicidal. I mean, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It just means maybe you've been through something really, really tough, and it's good to have somebody to talk to. And this woman I talk to, I still speak to her once in a while, every month. She gives you like kind of a way to get out of a negative feedback loop, where you get into these negative emotional feedback loops in your mind, how you feel bad and you start getting negative thoughts and that makes you feel worse and so forth. And there's a way to counter that by doing breathing exercises. Then you think, you work from a positive point of view. Well, what is great about what's going on, and how has that helped me in the past? And then you feel a little better, and then that you can get yourself out of that hole. So I think get help, get professional help. That's important, and two, to be physically active, because you got the head up here where you got all the problems, but the body can kind of keep you sane if you keep the body you try to keep it as healthy as you can.
Dolph, let me just offer this up as we thank you for your time. Ambustion in our live chat, powered by Park Power, says Dolph is such a thoughtful guy. What a cool interview. Steven says, what an absolute beauty. You can just tell. Dubious says, I had no idea Dolph was this deep. I love, by the way, everybody's referring to you on a first name basis in our chat, which I think says something. Others are just saying, Tracy says, Dolph strikes us all as a very genuine, authentic person, offering a huge thanks for you to appear on the show and talk in this manner. I want to echo that as well. Thank you so much for giving us your time and for joining the conversation today, and for really not holding anything back. We sure appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. No, I appreciate it. It's always good to just see Adam, and it's always good to try to, connect with people out there, and, to try to make our life a little happier, a little better.
This is the nerdiest thing that I could ever possibly sign off with, Dolph, but I'll let you know one of my best friends in the world is named Jay Lundgren, and he may be as tall as you. He's not as wide, but his fantasy hockey team, which is unfortunately the worst in the recorded history of our pool, is aptly named the Penticton Punishers. He might be your biggest fan. We all call him Dolph.
Yeah.
Okay, Jay, I'll see you up there one day on the ice.
I like that. We're bringing Dolph to draft. Thanks for doing this, buddy. We appreciate
Thanks, Dolph.
it.
Good seeing you, bud. We'll talk later today.
Talk later.
You got
Talk
it.
later.
That is
Thanks, bud.
iconic and legendary action star Dolph Lundgren. Dolph Unbreakable screens Tuesday, the 14th of April at 7 o'clock at the iconic Metro Cinema at the Garneau. This is part of the lineup for NorthwestFilmFest, which kicks off today. You can get your tickets, get a full festival pass, or pick and choose what you'd like to go see at NorthwestFest.ca. Adam, we're going to be joined by a couple of your fellow filmmakers here in just a moment in a Real Talk Roundtable, and it wouldn't be an episode of Real Talk if there wasn't another floor crossing politically. Don't worry, I'm not going to drag you. I'm not going to drag you into this unless you want to comment on it. But Johnny, I don't know if you saw this. The technical director of this show has just had his hands full doing a marvelous job today with a lot going on. But this, I will just mention, and we'll spend more time on this. I don't want to interrupt our conversation with the filmmakers. But Marilyn Gladu, who represents a riding in and around Sarnia, Ontario, has just announced her decision like moments ago as we were talking to Dolph Lundgren. So I'll never forget Marilyn Gladu's floor crossing.
Yeah.
This is like I get to do the ultimate name drop. Oh, yeah, I was interviewing Dolph Lundgren when I found out that Marilyn Gladu, but she has crossed the floor to Mark Carney's Liberals, to the caucus. It's just been announced, which now, of course, moves the Liberals to within one seat of a majority government with these by-elections looming next week. The Liberals will need to take one of three to form that majority. My guess is that they'll do at least that. Man, and I guess there could be more. If you follow me on X at Ryan Jesperson, you would have seen me share a note. This is, I don't know if I can take credit for this one, so it's not official Real Talk rumor mill kind of stuff, but the rumors are that the PMO is in touch with up to 10 opposition MPs. I mean, this is less of a floor crossing and more of a mass exodus situation if that manifests itself. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, and we'll leave more time. I don't want to dishonor our filmmakers here and break what we're talking about. We've still got you covered on Iran. We're going to bring you perspectives on that from both sides of the border, the Canada-U.S. border, that is. You'll hear from Prime Minister Mark Carney. You're going to hear from Laura Ingraham on Fox News, and we're going to hear from a couple of American senators as well. It is Wednesday, of course, and every Wednesday, courtesy of our friends at Tourism Jasper, we have a chance to step outside the news cycle for a couple of moments and remind you about the memories that lie in wait in beautiful Jasper National Park. It's MyJasper Memories, proudly presented by Tourism Jasper, and the Taste of Spring is coming to Jasper in a few weeks. This fresh annual festival celebrates the food, the art, the culture that makes this mountain town so absolutely special. And this week, I want to make sure that Taste of Spring is on your radar and on your calendar. This is a new signature culinary experience that's happening April 25th. Untamed Table is a chef-driven, story-led dining experience built around bison and foraged ingredients. This sounds unbelievable. A 5-course high-end dining experience at Olive Bistro and Lounge in Jasper. So this is a collaboration between Chef Daryl Hakaluk, who's at Jasper's Olive Bistro, and Chef Dean Fast out of Rouge in Calgary. Incredibly skilled chefs. They're going tip to tail with dishes that spotlight local bison, and they're working to integrate seasonal elements that'll reflect spring in the Rockies. You got to be in the Rockies to experience this. I mean, imagine even just walking into the venue in that fresh mountain air. You can see the landscape all around you. I mean, this is mind-blowing type stuff. Guests are going to be guided through each course with stories, of course, behind the food, the producers, and the landscape. that has produced much of what will wind up on your plate. There are optional add-ons, and that includes a cocktail hour and a wine pairing, which I would highly recommend. You can book tickets for this event, and you're going to find a lot more information as well, and a ton of options. You can, of course, see a wide variance of social options, of culinary options, of cabin and accommodation options, of shopping options. I could go on and on and on about Jasper National Park. You'll find it all at Jasper.travel. We'll link directly to the Taste of Spring in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. MyJasper Memories is proudly presented weekdays right here on Real Talk, courtesy of our friends at Tourism Jasper. And before I wrap, let me just fit in a reminder as well. It has been dumping snow out there, and it is perfect spring conditions out at Marmot Basin 2. You can check out skimarmot.com. They have their live cameras there, and kids ski-free Monday to Friday all the way through to the end of the season. Of course, it wouldn't be Jasper in April if we didn't mention the incredible opportunities out at Marmot Basin 2. Again, that's Jasper.travel to plan your getaway to Taste of Spring, happening April 25th. Well, I want to thank these two filmmakers who are joining producer Adam Scorgie around our Real Talk Roundtable here in the historic Mercer Warehouse, Nauzanin night, and Sheena Rossiter for tolerating a little provincial political talk. We've got some international political talk. We've got a development on the federal political stage, and I think there's going to be a lot of people that are checking out the schedule today for NorthwestFest that are going, I'm quite happy, thank you very much, to step outside of the news cycle and take a look at storytelling in a different form. I'm grateful to have both of you here. Nauzanin Knight returning to the show. You're the director of the Forbidden University, and Sheena Rossiter. You wrote, didn't you, The Perfect Match? You're writing and producing it, is that right?
Writing, producing, and editing. Not for the faint of heart.
Writing, producing, and editing.
And editing, yes.
Wow. Mm-hmm. I know from like many moons ago, just my time in sort of working as a journalist and in the news cycle as a TV reporter, editing, a brilliant editor is brilliant in their own right. It's a very unique skill set. A good writer does not always make a good editor, does not always make a good producer or director, right?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I don't know. This is just my take, but
Okay.
I think in documentary film, because the editing kind of is the writing, that is really where the magic happens, is in the post-production. That's just my take on it. I'm not sure if my colleagues would agree with that or not, but I feel like it really is kind of choose your own adventure, and it is a lot of toing and froing with the director as well. So
Okay, well, Nauzanin, you're smiling and nodding. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. It's, for my film, there were really 3 writing processes, and definitely the most substantial was in the editing process.
Okay, well, why don't we take a look? As a matter of fact, we've got trailers. I want to take a look first at the Forbidden University. You can talk to us about this project. Very timely right now. Very powerful film, to say the very least. And Sheena, we'll get to The Perfect Match with you in just a moment as well. But for the benefit of Real Talkers and to get everybody up to speed on what we'll be screening at NorthwestFest, here's a look at the Forbidden University.
I was a good student, but it was always in the back of my head that they will not let me in.
What happens when a society denies education to its own people?
I did not belong.
You were a Baha'i, you were out.
In Iran, members of the Baha'i faith have been banned from university for decades.
For Baha'i families, academic education is so important.
So they built their own.
So we had classes in the homes on the basement.
This prof came to the class with a big garbage bag full of human bones.
They created a sophisticated system on a scale that is unprecedented.
It was very risky.
Many of our friends have been arrested or have been kidnapped.
I would receive calls threatening.
So they took me and I couldn't say goodbye to my family.
The guy who was looking at me said, "What is your crime?" And I said, "I teach psychology."
Berkeley has now opened its doors to other students coming from the Baha'i Institute.
Being a BIHU student is very challenging. Students are always living with this feeling of uncertainty because you never know if your university will be there tomorrow or not.
The future of any society depends on protecting the rights of all.
Incredible stuff. The Forbidden University, by the way, screening at NorthwestFilmFest Saturday, April 11th at 2:30 p.m. NorthwestFest.ca. I'm watching you watch the trailer, and you're captivated. It's your own film. It's your project, and you were captivated. Can you talk to us about how this project came about and just why you decided to move ahead with it like you did?
Yeah, I mean, this project was over 5 years in the making. And it was a labor of love, you know, one that was very near and dear to my heart. I'm a member of the Baha'i community, and my mom, who's my co-producer, is also a member of the Baha'i community. And when she was in her teens, her citizenship was revoked from Iran, and she was stateless, and she found Canada as her new home. And she was denied access to her own country because she's a Baha'i. And so telling the stories of the Iranian Baha'i community that have been under persecution, especially so since the Islamic Revolution, is something that I've always wanted to do. And it seemed like a dream come true to be able to make this film. And I was so humbled. I mean, you said that I was captivated by the trailer, for the most part, because I'm so humbled by the participants, the 5 participants who, you know, at great risk told their stories, and I'm really humbled to get to share their stories. Yeah,
I was, to be honest with you, real talk around the table. Part of me is like almost hesitant to ask you about the risk factor. For that exact reason. And we're going to keep this conversation today about your film, but I will let you know that we have had many conversations, obviously, about Iran over the past couple of months, and I have shared with this audience, number one, how much it has meant to me, the courage that people have shown, Iranians living in Canada in particular, to join us on the show and talk about it, but also that there have been several, like many individuals who have well within their own right, and I absolutely respect and understand it, have declined an invitation to talk about it for that exact same reason, worrying about the safety of themselves and their family. Can I ask you about that, and even how that landed with you as an individual? I mean, do you feel like you took a personal risk in putting the film together?
I mean, certainly we have family in Iran, and they have been persecuted by the government. You know, my mom's cousin has been in and out of prison just for being a Baha'i. And so there's always a level of risk when we speak out about the atrocities committed by the Iranian regime. And likewise for the participants who have family in Iran and the actors who are not Baha'is themselves, many of them. And they decided to be a part of this story because of the meaningful change that they could possibly, you know, bring to the Iranian community. And I'm really inspired by them. So I think despite any risk, this is a story that had to be told.
Do you have, when you put a film like this together, and I want to ask all three of you about this, like just your process and kind of what drives it. Do you have, I would imagine like as a storyteller and as a longtime professional, I feel like, you know, it's almost like, you know, you talk to filmmakers and some of them will just say, I want to do the story justice, or I want to do the focus, like here, for example, with you, with Dolph Lundgren, you want to do Dolph's story justice. Is there like a bigger picture for you in what would define success when it comes to this project? How would you define success with something as meaningful and almost even as personal as this one is to you?
Yeah, I think in telling this story, this was the hardest project for me because although I was so inspired to tell this story, there's also quite a weight on your shoulders when you're telling a story that's so personal.
Yeah.
And like so meaningful to your community. And I think what would define doing this story justice is there's two elements to it. One, that we can persuade the international community to keep their eyes on what's happening in Iran, maybe to let go of partisan politics and extreme views of what's happening in the country, and just remember the citizens of the country. It's been 40 days now that there's been an internet blackout, a communications blackout, and we're not hearing from the people in the country what's happening. And there are still people being arrested for speaking about justice, for speaking about rights of minorities. There are still Baha'is, even within this hectic conflict, that are being arrested from their homes. And if we can just do something to shed a little light on what's happening in that country and really persuade people to keep their eyes on what's happening there, that would be at least a little small measure of success. And then on the other side of it, the Baha'i Institute for Higher Education is an underground university in Iran that was founded by the Baha'i community. And the Baha'is who graduate from that institution, some of them flee the country and they get to study at certain universities that have accepted BIHE credentials. Some universities have not. And I want to say, for example, in our hometown, the University of Alberta has not accepted BIHE credentials. So if we can do something to persuade certain universities to do so, that would be a great, way to open the doors to Baha'is who have to flee the country and pursue education elsewhere.
Feedback in our live chat, Les says, I didn't even know about this. Other people are telling us, I think it was Sharon that said that she knows somebody of the Baha'i faith that fled Iran for this exact reason. I mean, I'm thinking back, we had a roundtable here in studio just a few weeks ago. A local realtor, Nurin Estadian. I don't know if you know Nurin. Yes, we do. She was in sharing her story of her family's faith, the Baha'i faith, and how that influenced in part their decision to flee when she was a 10, 11-year-old girl, which she still remembers vividly. Of course, this is a story that's landing on more people's radar and probably in large part and will continue to do so because of your film. Again, if you're just joining us in this feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, that's Nauzanin Knight, director of The Forbidden University. It screens April 11th at NorthwestFest. I'm also watching Adam and Sheena. Like I love sitting around a table with creators and filmmakers because your brains work differently than everybody else and in a magical way. And I was just wondering if either of you have a question for her about her process or about the film itself. I mean, it just looked like both of you are kind of just hanging on every word that she's offering up.
Oh, it just looks incredible. I can't wait to watch it and experience and learn. I think that's the best thing about being a documentary filmmaker and working in it is the learning, the lifelong learning that you get to do and saying, I never knew about this, and learning and experience it. And so I'm really grateful for you making this film because it creates more awareness for all of us.
And to state the obvious, sorry to say it, but docs are a whole different animal, right? Yeah. Is there anybody that works in the doc space that also works in, what do you call the rest of them?
Scripted. Yeah.
Scripted. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
people that do both?
Naz works in scripted too. She's asking me, she's like, are you getting into scripted? I dabble in it with because my kind of forte is the financing. That's what they're much more talented on the creative side. Mine is kind of the wizardry, or they say is how I know how to put the financing and the pieces together. To answer your question of success for me on this one, would probably be what Dolph already did there. To see him get emotional when he mentioned me and my team's name and how much we've been there through this process would be for me. What it does outside of that is always, when you're honoring any story, like a powerful one like Naz's or Sheena's or you want to make sure you do the story justice, right? Yeah. But then there you are, as a producer, it's more less with the director and stuff. It's I'm also trying to make it commercially successful. So I'm trying to make that balance, right? It's also tough. That's usually the biggest challenge on my part. The creative side, I try to hire the best creatives to do there, and I try not to micromanage, right? I try to let them get there. But also answer your editing question. I believe the editor is super important.
Oh yeah,
scripted or unscripted. Doc, they're really yes, you write a treatment and you kind of have an outline of where you're going to go, but that's what's kind of the cool adventure of unscripted is it doesn't follow that. we didn't know Dolph was going to be battling cancer. There was a global pandemic that hit, so that changed things as you're filming, right? And then what Dolph was going through in his career and the movies, and like, so you have to pivot as it goes, right? And I think that's what great directors and great editors have to kind of fix in the edit, is making sure, okay, this was your original plot ship, but it's shifted, right? Things have happened, like you're dealing with an illness or something happens, and then you have to still make it's like, okay, how does the story shift now? And then you're still delivering that cohesive story to bring people on the journey, and have them move. But
I had always thought that the Dolph Unbreakable project, by the way, was like about Dolph's cancer journey. I didn't realize that the film was happening and then he shared the diagnosis.
Well,
it was not a film about him fighting cancer.
No, that's why it's shipped. That's why it's taken so long. Like normally it doesn't take 5 years of him working together, but he looked so different in the interviews. We had to like redo them, right? So that we could explain like, okay, he was sick and now he's coming out of it, right? Because you can see it in his interviews when he looks really, there's one where he opens his mouth and there's all these sores in there, right? From going through all the treatment. And you want to talk about a trooper, he didn't complain like at all. He also, his ankle had to be completely replaced and he'd be limping along and you could see how much pain it was. And you're like, Dolph, he's like, I'm fine. Right.
Yeah.
And he'd be on set of like, we were there for Aquaman 2. And like, we know how bad his ankle, it was like this big. It like he had to hide it, right? Of how, because when you're doing these movies, you're supposed to be these unbreakable action. You can't really say like, hey, I have a bad ankle, I can't. And he would be like barely able to stand offset, but then there'd be action. He'd walk like nothing and he'd be doing these fight scenes and like all of us like, oh, that must be killing right now. And he would not let in that there was an issue because they don't want the insurance and all the issues. So he would battle through it. The 80s and 90s action stars, if you look at them, they are all a mess because you didn't have green screens and stuff back then. Like if you had stunt doubles, but if like he was riding a horse and you had to jump on and fight a guy and fall off, they had to fall onto mattresses and then you'd get the stunt double to do it 2 or 3 times, right? To make sure you had all angles, but they did it, right? And back then you were trying to make it. So the guy's like, yeah, I'll do my own stunts. They're all hurt. Stallone's got major injuries. Arnold does. They all do from doing their own stunts because you had to look like you could actually, there's a line in there that Dolph says, like, you had to look like you could actually defeat all the villains by yourself, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't so that part was amazing for me as like a young guy that watch action movies. You don't even think about that, about the actual toll on your body like an athlete that action stars went through. So a lot of times when people are like, oh, action stars suck as actors, I'm like, well, the physical part that they brought to the movies, a lot of traditional like theater actors couldn't do because they just don't have the physical presence or the ability to be able to do that.
You're talking about sort of the focus changing mid-project. It reminds me of Icarus. Did you guys ever see that? The 2017 doc where they...
You can tell where the money got inserted because that was a very indie film until like a big company and then they push for the Oscar and like it starts very indie. He's like riding the bike and all of a sudden huge production shots. I'm like, oh, I could see right when this like shifted.
But that it's like they knew, I mean, unless they're leading the audience along and I just took it hook, line, and sinker, but it starts, I almost don't want to wreck it. I mean, you've had 10 years to watch it, Real Talkers, but if you haven't watched it, it just
won the Oscar,
halfway through just changes the whole. Let's talk about The Perfect Match. Before we do, so we'll let everybody know this screens April 11th, coming up 7 p.m. at Northwest Film Fest. Before we talk to Sheena about it, let's take a look at The Perfect Match.
The very moment Ezra came, I was filled with so much joy. One morning, he's just not doing anything. So I knew something was wrong. It was cancer. I knew nothing about stem cells.
Jacob needs to find a perfect match for his son. One of the challenges, donors and recipients are much more likely to be a match when there's a shared ethnic background.
Very few Black people are on the stem cell registry.
Within a lot of African communities, health is taboo.
Please step out there and swallow so that you can save a life.
That's The Perfect Match, and I have chills. Please step up and take a swab so you can change a life. Wow.
Yeah, it was how everything kind of came about is almost 4 years ago, the director, who's also my husband, Sandro, he was contacted by a volunteer who's a fellow Afro-Brazilian. And he was contacted to swab for Ezra, the toddler that you see there in the trailer, because Ezra was dying of a very rare form of blood cancer and needed to get that perfect match in order to save his life. And so most people don't understand that stem cells, blood stem cells, are highly connected to ancestry and ethnicity. And so they were just reaching out to everyone in Black communities, even though Sandro's from Brazil and Ezra's from Ghanaian ancestry. They still were just seeing who could match. So out of desperation, they were just going around to everyone. And at the time, I just had our child, and Sandro was really taken aback by it. He's just like, oh, I can't donate because I'm over the age of 35. How can I help? And then I can't swab, but we can make a documentary about it. So after several months of talking with Jacob, the father that you saw in the trailer, we put it into place and we pitched it to TELUS Originals to get financing to make a documentary. And almost 4 years later, here we are. And we're really proud that we can bring this to the forefront so more people are aware of how to donate blood stem cells, because most people just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really about raising awareness and just helping save more lives simply through swabbing and getting on the registry, because the more reflective the stem cell registry is of the general population, the more likely lives will get to be saved.
My brain is telling me to make a comparison for conversation purposes, and I feel like it's not a smart one. So will you permit me, if speaking of editing, this may hit the cutting room floor. But I don't know why I'm drawing a line between stem cells and Bitcoin. But let me say this in your face. You're like, go on.
Like, where's this going?
Go on. Here's what I would say.
Okay.
With both stem cells and Bitcoin, and please don't read too much into it, audience, surface observation. The people that are bullish on it are so bullish on it and believe that it represents the future of, and in the stem cell context, maybe treatment of disease or longevity or what have you, in Bitcoin, finance and saving and trends, the people that oppose it, oppose it to their core, it seems. And my understanding has been, on a surface level, like when I've taken a look at like stem cells and seeing some of the politicized, I remember like former U.S. President George W. Bush talking about stem cells. I remember it's been politicized and talked about. I know that there's been some pushback from some groups, who sort of oppose it on either moral or ethic grounds or what have you, including the sort of the pro-life groups and things like that. It's almost like both the subjects I bring up seem to be very divisive. If you oppose it, you really oppose it. If you're really into it, you're really into it. And then probably in both situations, the majority of people really don't understand it at all.
I think it's mostly that, actually. I think there seems to be less opposition to it, so to speak. I think it's just most people just aren't aware of what stem cells do and how they can save lives. For example, blood stem cells can save about 80 people from 80 different diseases, not just blood cancers, but in the film as well, we feature two advocates who are survivors of sickle cell disease because they had successful stem cell transplants from each of them from their sisters. Their sisters were perfect matches for them. So I think it's just that most people aren't aware of it, because I first was educated about stem cells a few years ago when I was working at CBC Edmonton. There was a woman here in Edmonton. She was a university student in her 20s. She was ethnically Chinese, and she needed a stem cell transplant. And that was the first awareness that I got of it. And I'm like, oh, maybe I can donate stem cells. But you have to be between the ages of 17 to 35. So I think it's just awareness to be able to know what they are and how to be able to donate. Or it's not even so much donating, it's just getting on the stem cell registry, and you can do that through swabbing. And if you are a match, that's when they then connect you with the person that you're matched with, and then that's when you choose if you want to donate or not to save a life. So you really have that option there. But I think it's just a lack of awareness, and that's really what we hope to do through this film, is just to raise awareness about stem cell donation, because you can see successes and what happens if you can't find a match. It's really challenging.
Yeah. Jillian in our live chat, powered by Park Power, says, I'm so mixed I'm cooked if I need stem cells, which is kind of a funny comment. But the sort of like the ethnic element of this, I can imagine, introduces a number of different angles in practice in real life, and maybe some challenges. Also, I would imagine maybe some potential opportunity where you can rally communities to get behind a young kid like Ezra or anybody else that needs the stem cells. But also on the flip side, stories of discrimination or stories of limited opportunity or limited access. Did you see that through the process?
Yes, exactly. So I think it's because of the lack of awareness around it, there was more reluctance from potential people in African communities or Black or Caribbean communities to want to get swabbed, just because of a little bit of lack of information or misinformation about what stem cell swabbing does and potential donating. So again, that's what we're really hoping to accomplish through the film, is that there's just less people from those communities on the stem cell registry. So Black, African, and Caribbean communities in Canada only make up about 2% of the stem cell registry, which is not reflective of that population. So that's what we're really hoping to accomplish, is that through this, people can see and understand a little bit more and learn about it, so they would want to get swabbed and donate, because you never know what could happen and when your health could take a turn, right? So you never know that maybe you will need to be a donor or a recipient one day.
Of course. Yeah. A friend of mine donated a kidney a couple of years ago, and it was like fascinating. I felt like I learned so much just by watching his updates on social media. I mean, you're doing obviously a full documentary film, screening at NorthwestFest, and I'll recognize you're not a medical professional or a doctor, but there are some people asking questions in here. I don't know. Goramu says, asking for a friend, what's wrong with over 35-year-old stem cells?
So what we learned from the professionals that are in the film is just medically, the older that you are when you're over the age of 35, it just doesn't match as well. Like, your cells just aren't as healthy anymore. So it's just like anybody, your cells have been working longer and harder, and they're just tired.
So at 45, we're cooked, right? And
oh my gosh, I'm about to turn 49.
Yeah. So you're just getting, your cells are more tired. So medically, it's just better the younger you are. So depending on the country and the jurisdiction, sometimes there is no age restriction, but within Canada, it's between the ages of 17 to 35. One woman in our film, her sibling did donate to her, and she was 12 when she donated. So when you're under the age of 17, then that's a conversation that the family has to have with the medical professionals. So I hope that answers that question. That's basically, it's just medically proven that the younger you are, the better it will be.
There's a comment in here, boomer stem cells are grumpy and they don't want to help the younger stems. They don't want to help the younger cells. 80s Fanify says, my cells are exhausted. I want to ask each of you this question, and it can be the film that we're talking about today. Like we're talking to Sheena Rossiter about The Perfect Match, and we're talking to Nauzanin, of course, about her film, Nauzanin Night, about the Forbidden University. Dolph Unbreakable is Adam Scorgie's film, all of them screening at NorthwestFest, which kicks off today, the 8th of April. You can check out NorthwestFest.ca. Was there something, I would imagine this was a huge learning process for you and probably pretty amazing, but did it change your mind on anything, or did it change the way that you think about something bigger picture, about healthcare delivery or access to healthcare, or even people here talking about government databases on DNA and how they could tap into that and better use that information to help people understand how they could contribute? Like, any of that for you?
I think what this project really did for me, of course, you learn with every project, and I'm sure everyone can attest to that. But what this actually really brought to me was how the great work that the advocates do in this film. Like Jacob Marfo, the lead in this film, oh my goodness, the amount of work that he does to really raise awareness about stem cells, to get more people swabbed off the side of his desk on his own time, is just so admirable. Same with Ufoma Mwen, who created her own nonprofit to raise awareness about sickle cell disorder, and Reve Ejapong Brown, who also does so much work with all of that. It's just really admirable, the work that they do, and we're just so honored that they invited us into their worlds to follow them around for over a year to really get into everything. And the trust that you have to have in documentary is just huge. So I wouldn't say it necessarily changed my mind about medical systems per se, but it really goes to show the power of advocacy at a grassroots level, how it can really change things for people beyond themselves.
Nauzanin, with your film, it's like you approached it with a pretty, you're not going to say you knew everything, but like you approached with a pretty clear understanding of what the reality was and what the people's general speaking challenges were. Of course, they would tell you their personal stories, but did your film, The Forbidden University, change the way that you thought about the issue or deepen your conviction about something?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that really surprised me when I made this film is hearing from one of our participants, Iran. You'll see him in the film, and he was imprisoned for 5 years. He was tortured. He was kidnapped on the street and didn't have a fair trial to speak of. And when he talks about how many days he was in prison, he smiles. You'll see it was one of the most it was a very emotional moment for me in the interview, and seeing it back every time I see it, it's very emotional. And I learned a lot about constructive resilience. It's something that it's too rare, I think, in society, where we've sort of been trained that our automatic response to oppression is to fight back, right? That's kind of the way that we've been trained. And this community in Iran is doing the opposite. They're advancing themselves through education to be able to serve their community, that is including the oppressor. And that really strengthened, I think, my faith, and it really opened my eyes to new ways of dealing with oppression.
Amazing. How about you? I don't know what you would have. You didn't change your mind on Dolph Lundgren being one of the most iconic and incredible.
No, I liked him more after
stars of all
working
time.
with it, yeah.
I like him more after. Have any of the films you've worked on? You've talked to us about several of them before on the show. Have any of them changed your mind or changed the way you thought? Or I mean, I would imagine each one of them has deepened your understanding of the subject.
Yeah, they all change. I think what I learned with all of them, including Dolph's, is that, and kind of going on with Nauzanin, like, you never want resistance or oppression or horrible things to happen to people, but when these things happen, and in Dolph's case, cancer battle on top of like the abuse of his dad and stuff, if you get through that and you come out on the other side, you become a much better person. Like, hardship and adversity builds character and builds, you know, if you want, in Dolph's case, a hero, right? It has to go through adversity to become the hero. So I think that's what all the stories for me is. We try to find characters that have that. I mean, Nauzanin and Sheena's are like much more, I think, I don't want to say impactful, but like, yeah, like there's whole communities behind theirs where, you know, Dolph's is more singular on his, but that is something where it's kind of why I put my kids into martial arts, because I think you want hardships and disappointment. Like, you can work, I've seen my kids, they work their asses off in martial arts, and then they can go and they can get smushed right away, right? Where you can go fight someone, and overcoming that hardship and that heartbreak and seeing them cry and go through that, it builds better character. So I would not wish for what, you know, the characters of films went through, or Dolph going through cancer or the abuse from his dad. But if you get through that and come out on the other side, you are a better person. You're not just stronger. It builds character. It shows you how to overcome adversity, how to overcome challenges. And I think that's what all these underlying tones and the messages in these, and that it's inspiring at the end. And I do try for every film that we do. I don't like to do crash and burn stories where there's no positive on the outside. I've done one of those, and it's hard. It's hard to, you know, we have enough, like saying we're trying to stay away from the political climate and how miserable it is out there. Like, we have enough in the world that, like, when you go into the theater, whether it's unscripted or scripted, I usually like to come out with a positive feeling of a hero. Maybe that's a traditional hero or an untraditional hero, like you see in Nauzanin's films. But I usually like to come out and be like, oh man, that inspired me to look at it more. I want to dive deeper. I didn't know that was going on. That's, I'm pretty over movies where I'm like, man, that just made me feel shittier. Like,
yeah.
like, I'm good. I don't need need any of those drama or unscripted if possible.
Yeah, no kidding. Before I thank you all for your time, I know it's a huge day, obviously, with the festival kicking off, and there's a lot to get to, and I want to let the audience know you can check out NorthwestFest.ca and check out the full lineup. It's jammed. April 8th to 14th, like 40 films screening. By the way, how cool is it that they're screening the 50th anniversary versions of All the President's Men and Network? These are like
so awesome,
so cool.
And I have a cool story.
Swept the 77 Oscars. What's your story?
With Guy, so Guy that runs Northwest Fest.
Guy Lavalley, a beauty.
Yeah, he booked my very first film, The Union, The Business Behind Getting High, screened in 2007. At Edmonton Film Festival when he was a programmer there, right? And we'd won the best documentary for Canadian Doc at that time, and we have stayed in contact with him almost 20 years now. It's to 2026.
We're old, dude.
Old dude, and still booking. But that's kind of a cool, like, he booked my very first film almost 20 years ago, and now is booking 2 of my films, because Tutu's in there again, even though Tutu's available on Super Channel. It's up for the Edmonton Film Prize, so they're screening it on the big screen there. So if you... another great story if you want to see that one too.
Very cool. I want to ask the three of you just about the state of Canadian filmmaking and documentaries in particular. And obviously, I mean, people recognize Canadian talent around the world. We have some of the most amazing vistas. We have some of the most talented directors and producers. But like day to day, what's life like for a Canadian filmmaker and generally speaking, looking at the value of a festival like this, an opportunity to get enthusiasts in person, back in theaters, watching your work, not pressing pause, not streaming it from an app. Like, you get the idea. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm getting at. What's your assessment of it?
Yeah, I mean, filmmaking is really hard, right? And I think I always tell people that you have no idea how much we deal with lawyers and accountants. It is quite the slog, right? And although the red carpet walk is wonderful and we love doing it, just before we came in, the three of us were sitting in the green room talking about how long you've been working on your film. It's like years. It takes years to work on these projects. And I think that's the thing that people don't really see, is that there's so much work that goes in behind the scenes into these projects. So the red carpet walk is great. And this is super important, particularly Northwest Fest we're really happy about, because you get your cast and crew that are all local. They can come out and see it. You can celebrate with your friends and family. So it really is important to have those celebrations of success after you've worked on something for so long and it's taken part of you that you'll never get back. But the value, but the value of it is, it is really great to see it come out into the world. But it is a slog. I'm not going to lie.
Oh no, yeah. I can't even imagine. And just seeing professionals, and I've just had such limited exposure to it, but just obsess, like in a positive way, but just obsess over every single detail, every little sound up, like just everything.
The small details matter, because the small details add up to make the whole picture.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? What's your assessment of it?
Well, I mean, I think, and Sheena and I were discussing this outside too, there's a whole nother part of the process that happens when the film is released, and it's as much work, if not more, than the making of the film. It's like the impact campaign, the distribution, for a film like mine, educational distribution as well. And that process it can be years and years. So I'm excited to see like a new life for the film. It had one birth and now here's the other, and what a great way, as Sheena said, to be able to screen it in the community where we had so many, brilliant and hardworking people from Edmonton contributing their talents to this film, and they'll be in the theater with us to see it come to fruition. It's amazing.
I love that.
Yeah, the state industry is tough. I'll go more into. I mean, you've got AI coming. You've got things, or here, it's now more than ever.
Well, let me interrupt.
Yep.
AI in what? Like someone's going to punch in an idea and it's going to write the whole script? Is that the concern?
This is where I still think like being an unscripted is great, because people want real. Like that's the one thing is docs. They had their golden era. They say they've fallen a little bit, but a lot of people still like to watch docs, because as we were even talking outside, like the news nowadays, you're kind of like, seems all bullshit on both sides. Like, it just, when you want something real and you want connection, you watch a doc, because people are sitting down, they're sharing stories, they're telling their heart and soul, they're getting emotional. I mean, you saw Dolph, like, I wasn't expecting that. He got emotional on the interview today, right? Like, they share a part of
You
themselves.
just want to say that you made Dolph Lundgren cry.
No, we made him cry a couple times. So we make everybody cry in my films. That's a Scorgie skill, or the directors, I should say. I don't take that,
Sure.
but it's just I think now more than ever, where Canada, we have very, very talented creators up here, and the big competitive advantage we have is the film tax credits. And I think if they're young filmmakers getting into it, you need to understand that, like the national anthem. That is how you don't have, doesn't matter how many creatives you have on your team, if you don't have financing to bring it to life, you can't get it out there. And as Naz said, like, the marketing and distribution, that is a whole other monster now, because you're not just competing with movies, you're competing with TikTok and short form. And shoot, my last talk with Netflix was so depressing when they're like, we're looking for content that's 2-screen content. And I was like, what do you mean by that? They're like, oh, that somebody can have your film on in the background while they're on their phone.
What?
Yeah. And I was like, you actually want people to create that where they're just kind of playing in the background? I'm like, well, my team doesn't do that. We create things that we want your attention. So,
Nauzanin, that blew you back in your chair when he said that.
I can't believe it. Like, I mean, the point of a film, especially a documentary film, is to go deep into the story. How could you be watching?
I know, it made me puke, but it's like they're the
side?
biggest company in the world right now for distribution. And almost, if you don't live, like most people, I'm sure when they ask you, oh, is it going to be on Netflix? And you're like, no. And they're like, well, where do you even see it then, right? Because like so many people are so used to hitting that big red letter, and if it's not on there, it doesn't exist, right? I'm sure you guys have been to my panels when I ask people, how many people in the audience have paid for a movie outside of the theater? They're like, what do you mean pay for it? I mean, like, rent it on VOD for $3.99? They're like, oh, I haven't done that. I got a Fire Stick, or I've done this. I did, like, so it's hard. Like, it is very hard for movies to make it now. So you have to understand, again, I'm not trying to preach, but that's where I've really, for me, to stay competitive and to be able to look after my families, really understand the financing and make sure that it makes sense that way, because it is a business, right? A film business. So if you don't know how to make it a business, I tell young filmmakers all the time, I'm like, the sooner you treat it like a business and not a hobby, the sooner it will reciprocate that, right? So you better learn how to do it and not just learn how to be creative. And that's all part of it too. You got to do that as well, but you also have to understand the business aspect.
I'm not trying to be negative, but do you find that discouraging, what Adam said about the expectation of one of the world's biggest distribution platforms, that they would want creators producing films that could be watched while someone's also scrolling on their phone? That seems to me to almost be kind of representative of a lot of the things that are wrong with all of us.
I mean, but we all do it. We're all on our phone when we're watching movies. I mean,
I'm arguably the worst.
Yeah, I mean, we can't pretend like that doesn't happen, because of course that does happen. And I think, like anything, the key to survival is adaptation. It's just like, we don't go to the cinema anymore to watch the 5-minute newsreel like you did during the World Wars.
Yeah.
Things have changed, and we don't rent DVDs anymore. Blockbuster doesn't exist for a reason.
I miss it.
Yeah, but I mean, you just the key to survival is just adaptation. So I think these things don't die. You just have to adapt, and they just change, and you have to adapt with it.
It's a good sign up to throw back to NorthwestFest, is that this is what's great about film festivals in the theaters, because you can't pick up your damn phone, right? That is where you're in the awkward, like, hey, not here, right?
Yes.
It goes off. You tune in for the 75 minutes or 60 minutes that the film is, and you watch it. And I still love it when you can do that, because audience reactions when you go through it is my favorite part as a filmmaker, when you have a full audience, because you'll see your film differently. You've watched it 100 times in the edit, but then when you see people reacting, getting emotional, tearing up, laughing at moments where there's humor, or finding humor in things that wasn't humorous in one market but is somewhere else, that's my favorite part. Usually when I do a screening of a film that's been out for a while, people are like, come on, you probably want to go for drinks or something, you don't want to watch again. I'm like, no, actually, I want to sit at the back of the theater and I want to watch how they're reacting, right? You were there when we did that with Tutu. You were like, yeah, let's go. And I was like, no, I want to see how everybody reacts when they watch it. I want to see where they're getting emotional, where it hits differently. And you can even see in different communities where it hits differently. Like, we recently screened in the Arctic with Tutu, and obviously that being in their backyard, that hit very differently there, right? So they were coming up saying, this reminds me of my household. Like that was my house. Your family represents my family. Whereas if you have it here, people, they don't maybe understand the dysfunction and chaos that was happening in Jordan's home as well here, right?
Yes.
Because that wasn't there. So that is a great part, and all the more reason to support these films at Northwest Fest. I know everything is sales online and going, but if you can support great local filmmakers, and it is a fantastic way to celebrate locally with the team that has put in years of work to go in and say, hey, there it is all on screen. I remember shooting this or doing the sound there or doing that. So we don't often get a lot of ways to celebrate. I know people think the film industry is all about red carpets and kissing babies. It isn't. That's the very end. And it's nice that, and really great because I know both Naz and Sheena. I actually helped consult a little bit with Sheena. So it's kind of full circle to see, and I've helped Naz too, where something I try to do with anybody that reaches out and wants guidance or help or whatever, I'll try in the film industry, because I think we need to band together. The feast or famine mentality is garbage. Don't ever do that. I don't feel that if Sheena has success or Naz has success, somehow that takes away from me. No, I love to see them kicking ass, and I want to support them as much as I can. So I hope other people come out this week too.
Yeah, absolutely. We feel the same about streaming shows and podcasts. I've heard restaurateurs say the exact same thing. They'd way rather be in a district where there's 10 booming restaurants than be absolutely all by themselves.
Yeah.
While all the other restaurants are closing their doors. Mariah Braun is watching us this morning in our live stream presented by California Closets. You can find her on Instagram at Mariah B Creates. She's a filmmaker as well. She says watching the audience reaction is it for a filmmaker for sure. Meta Modern says content versus movies. One is barely stimulating slop, and the other can move your life.
Well
and Jillian says, in fairness to Netflix, they're just responding to how pathetic we've all become.
Yeah,
which I think is
they're trying
probably
to. Their mandates is to get new subscribers and longevity of watching, right? So they don't really care if you're not. That's not all their content, but that was just one conversation I had when they're like, "We're looking for this." I'm like, "Well, I'm not your guy. I want people paying attention to mine, so not for me."
Love it. That's Adam Scorgie. He's the producer of Dolph Unbreakable. Awesome to have Sheena Rossiter in here as well, talking about The Perfect Match, and of course Nauzanin Knight returning to the show, talking about her new film, The Forbidden University. You can check them all out. Northwest Fest kicks off today. Northwest Film Fest online at northwestfest.ca, April 8th through the 14th. If you're a Real Talk patron, if you support us on Patreon, or if you're a YouTube channel member at the Real Deal or Real VIP levels, we have 2 tickets for you to check out a film of your choice. Check your messages, friends, for details on that and how to claim that. We're so proud to support this film festival every single year, and I really appreciate the 3 of you joining us in studio to share your love of the craft. Best of luck. And enjoy this week. Enjoy the packed houses checking out your films.
Thank you.
Nothing like it. These conversations on Real Talk happen with the support of amazing partners like our friends at Friesen Brothers. You can find them online anytime at Friesen.com and in 16 different Alberta communities. Adam, actually, hang on for a second. I got to ask you for an update in a second. Hang on. I'm just realizing we got to ask you about your brother. Can you stay for 2 minutes? Okay. Friesen Brothers right now, friends. First day of every month, 15% off all grocery purchases of $75 or more. But coming up this weekend, April 11th and 12th, you can enjoy Ukrainian Feast at Friesen Brothers Fresh Market locations, as well as High Prairie and Barhead. $25 per person for an all-you-can-eat meal, plus a free slice of fruit pie with every purchased dinner. How great is that? All you can eat for $25. You kidding me? You can learn more at Friesen.com/Ukrainian Feast or pop into a participating location. That's Friesen Brothers Fresh Market locations plus High Prairie and Barhead. Our friends at the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, obviously so many different benefits of membership. We're talking to you every single week about why we are so proud to be Edmonton Chamber members and why it's been our business's most valuable investment. Well, a big part of that is the Chamber events calendar. You can find it online at edmontonchamber.com, and that includes the Tourism Week kickoff. Now, Coffee with the Chamber. This happens every month. I love this tradition. A different venue every single time. A lot of times they're giving you access to venues that you wouldn't otherwise be able to enjoy in this context. Well, Coffee with the Chamber, April 17th. It's a partnership with Explore Edmonton. They're showcasing proudly all that Edmonton has to offer. Come check out Coffee with the Chamber. Learn some ways that you can be a tourist in your own city. It's going to be at Parallel, Alberta. Again, you can get your tickets, $10 for members, $25 for future members. I like how they do that at edmontonchamber.com. You know, Albertans are winning every single day with Play Alberta on the Play Alberta app and at playalberta.ca with hundreds of different casino games. There's bound to be a fit for everybody that's looking to have a little fun. You know, one of the reasons why we're such big fans and proud to partner with Play Alberta is that all of the revenue stays right here in the province. That is the only site where that's the case, and that is the only site that we're partnering with. If you like what you're hearing, you can download the app today to get started with casino, sports, and lottery all in one app. Of course, you got to be 18 or over to play, and when you gamble, please use your game sense. Coming up on the next episode of Real Talk, the return of Alberta Wins. These are stories of Albertans making an impact in the world around them, proudly presented by Play Alberta. You can submit your Alberta win. I mean, friends, it could be a lemonade stand that just went off. It could be a minor sports team winning a major event. Whatever it is, we're proud to feature Alberta Wins, presented by Play Alberta. And before we get an update from Adam, we're going to check in on the floor crossing. We're going to take a look at the United States and Iran. I mean, what is this reiterating? It's reiterating that the world is dynamic, that it is fast changing around us, and that it impacts markets and investments. Never before has it been so important to have a steady hand and a studied voice to guide you through wealth and investing. That's exactly what the team at North Road Investment Council brings to the table. You can find them online at northroadic.com. Make sure you check out Marshall and Misha's appearance on Real Talk just last week, outlining the digital risks and how we can protect ourselves from being compromised online. You'll find it in the highlights on our YouTube channel. A big shout out to the team at North Road Investment Council for being recognized in Edify's annual list of edifiers as a trailblazer for 2026. You can learn more about it, read the article itself, and connect with the team at North Road Investment Council by visiting northroadic.com. Sorry, just an impromptu request for you to stick around just for a minute because I know that at some point Real Talkers would say, Jesperson, how on earth do you not ask the guy about his brother who's been in ICE detention? At the time that you talked to us on February 26th, I'm showing it on my screen right now. People can check out the episode, Canadian Detained by ICE for 100 plus days. Well, it's been another month, and I haven't heard about Curtis's release. So what's going on?
He's still in there. He had his court case about a month ago now, and he was ordered to be deported. The lawyers tried to argue, and the 2 points that they were trying to argue is that, one, his misdemeanor charge happened after 5 years of having his green card, which is within the first 5 years is when you have your green card revoked, right? Yeah. But it was after that, and he was 17. He was a minor. The other thing is then ICE or immigration has a 7-year, statute in which they can implement additional charges, and that was 21 years ago. So the two laws, the lawyers are like, well, these are infraction of his constitutional rights based on being a green card holder. And literally the judge said she wouldn't allow any cameras in that day. She shut down all, which is supposed to be, every court trial is supposed to be public, right? It is a public house. Like, you can go film in there. I know this from a filmmaker where they tell you not to film. You're like, actually, this is a public building. Okay. I'm allowed to. They shut it all down. And she said, I don't care what the law says. I want him out. So he can now appeal, and now they're going for his habeas corpus, which is it's a federal ruling. They're just waiting on the judge to do that so that he can at least fight it outside. Like, he's ready to handle whatever. He's fighting to stay because his boys are in the United States, right? But if he has to get deported, he's like, that's fine. But he's like, I should at least be able to do that outside of being in detention, right? That why waste taxpayers' dollars more? You order me deported, I can get things organized while I appeal outside of the court. But they don't, ICE doesn't make money that way, right? They want you in there. That's how they get there. So he's been in there now, it's coming on 6 months, and we're hoping that he'll get the habeas corpus so he can at least fight his appeal from outside of the detention center. But they also, it really seems that they did not like him doing media in there because he said, he said the warden pulled him in and was like, oh, hey, we didn't know that you weren't getting fed and that the water was making people sick. And he's like, I'm sure you did. And he's still in a cell with 6 other guys where, if you look at, maximum security prisons, it's 2 per cell. You still get, you look at everything going on in the world with pedophiles and violent criminals, they still get due process. They still get out on bail. They can still do all that, whereas he doesn't get any of that, right? Yeah. He's not allowed to go out on bail. He's not a flight risk. They're just continuing to waste money to hold him in there to show him, like, don't you question authority. And, of course, the judge that he had, they're trying to move him to somewhere else. She used to work for ICE. So
Yes.
So it's a little biased and a little, but that is the world he's in right now. So he still has. We were just down visiting my family in Texas, and we were hoping he'd be out by this time so the whole family could get together. We hung out with his daughter Brixley, and we went down to Port Aransas down in Texas. Went to the beach for a few days with his wife. It was great to see the family. Of course, we all missed him. He was calling us as much as he could through Zoom and Skype. But yeah, we're hoping he gets his habeas corpus. It's, they say 2 to 6 weeks. It's been like 6 weeks. It's been over. So we're hoping he can at least get that, and then make arrangements if he has to deport back, that he can at least do that outside of the prison cell, because that's not helping.
All right. Well, thanks for the update, and continue to think of you. I'm blown away that you guys can just sort of keep. Not that it's not on your mind, I'm sure, in your heart all the time, but just kind of keep going about your business and, doing what you do as your brother's locked in a cell, for 6 months.
Well,
it's wild.
I'll say the thing that helps with that is the way he's handling it. As I mentioned, my brother's sober now. He's been in recovery for a while. So his way of looking at it is very admirable. It's like saying, look, these are mistakes I made. Of course, I don't feel right about being, wrongly locked up, but, you have to answer for what you did. So he's like, I should be able to fight this outside of the jail cell, like most people, but he's handling it very well. He's actually inspiring us at how well he's handling everything. And again, he's not in any danger in there. That's the one thing, is we're always like, what's it like in there? He's like, it's not hardened criminals and gangsters. It's farmers and stuff. He's like,
yeah,
I'm not worried. Don't worry there. I'm good, guys. He's like, it's just shitty food in a shitty cell, but he's like, overall, I'll be fine. And,
glad to hear his spirits are at least in the right place.
Yeah.
All things considered.
Yeah. Thanks, bud.
All right, brother. Thanks for the update.
No problem.
You can check that episode out, by the way, in our YouTube archives and whenever you get your podcast. Johnny, let's take this. This is live. We'll share this courtesy of CPAC. I think we should be able to get some audio here if I share it from my screen. But this is the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, introducing a new MP.
C'est un grand plaisir d'accueillir Marilyn Gladu à l'équipe du gouvernement, au caucus libéral. Marilyn était une ingénieure. Elle a beaucoup d'expérience commerciale à l'étranger.
Talking about a lot of experience in your professional career, obviously.
Une des députées qui travaille pour ses électeurs, mais qui travaille dans un d'un esprit de coopération au Parlement.
Talking about the work she's done in and outside of Parliament.
To welcome Marilyn Gladu to, and we'll do it officially, so
yes.
This is a handshake in English, officially to the Government Caucus and to the Liberal Caucus. Marilyn has tremendous experience in business as an engineer. International business experience, and 10 years, 4 elections of experience in Parliament, and one of the most collaborative members of Parliament, working across party lines on important issues, and really dedicated to her electors in Sarnia, Lambton, Baie-Quechua, which I am informed rightly means where the waters meet. And the waters, in my analogy, are meeting in service of Canadians at this crucial time for our country, and I couldn't be happy. I know Mr. Solomon, who knows her well and has worked closely with her over the years. We couldn't be happier to have this expertise, experience, and energy coming to our team. So welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be the newest member of our new Liberal government. I've been watching the Prime Minister since he was elected, and the big things that he is driving, nation-building projects, diversifying our trade, bolstering our defense, plans to address criminality and build more homes. These are all the things that Canadians want. These are actually the things that the people of Sarnia, Lambton, Baie-Quechua want. As the Prime Minister mentioned, I worked for decades globally as a chemical engineer and in numerous sectors in very complex supply chains. So I think I have a lot of experience that can help accelerate the government's priorities. Sarnia, Lambton is an economic hub. We have 30% of the petrochemicals in the country, and we have the largest economic traffic across the Blue Water Bridge. And so we need a serious leader who can address the uncertainty that has arrived due to the unjustified American tariffs. We need a global leader with a plan to make a more resilient Canada, a stronger Canada, a more self-reliant Canada for this critical moment. And that man is our Prime Minister, Mark Carney. He's invited me to bring my experience, my talents, and my views into the large Liberal tent, and I think that will have a better effect inside than it will outside. And so I am happy to start working with my Liberal colleagues and the Prime Minister to build Canada strong.
Okay, so there you go. That's Marilyn Gladu out of Ontario, formerly a Conservative MP, who has crossed the floor to the Liberals in the middle of our Dolph Lundgren interview. And Johnny, a lot of people are saying it's kind of a strange fit. People, looking at sort of some of her more socially conservative views. She's obviously a former Conservative MP that's now moved over to the Liberals. I thought it was interesting there, and this is just our first time hearing it, so that's courtesy of CPAC. We're taking that stream with the Prime Minister and Canada's AI Minister, Evan Solomon, who was on the show a couple of months ago, introducing her talking about her views. She specifically referenced her views and the large Liberal tent, which I thought was interesting. It jumped out at me. Some of you may feel like, am I reading too much into that? I don't know. I also thought what really jumped out at me, just in her opening comments, she says we need a serious leader. We need a global leader with a plan, and that man is Prime Minister Mark Carney. Leaving one party, moving to another, and saying we need a serious leader, to me feels like an indictment of the leader of the party she's leaving, or at the very least, some insight into what it was that would have prompted her decision to cross the floor. I don't think that anybody would have characterized Marilyn Gladu as sort of a liberal in conservative clothing. That's certainly not the case. Like I'm just reading what people are saying here in our live chat, and a lot of you sort of feel like that she was not the MP that you would have guessed that may have been crossing the floor at this time, we'll just have to see. I mean, there's several politicians right now, if rumors are to be believed, like they say up to 10 of them are in conversations with the PMO. And again, that's like someone could just be throwing a number out there, and I've heard that there's up to 10, and then I'm regurgitating this number, then you're going to go tell your friends that number, and then all of a sudden we're starting rumors where we don't want to say if there's if there's no fire, there should be no smoke. But I don't know that anybody would have had her on the list. Except for people that maybe would have known her well. It's I don't know if it's an accident she's wearing her red sweater today. Maybe that was probably on purpose, as she sits down and basically introduces herself in a whole new context to members of the media that are gathered there. Another small point of note, which I thought was interesting, is Jillian, a valued audience member of ours, originally from Quebec, says Carney was literally just repeating in English what he said out of the gates in French. Nice. You'll remember that Carney, of course, was one of the most outspoken critics of the soon-to-be former Air Canada CEO for not speaking French out of the gates in his address to Canadians. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then, maybe this sort of indicates as well that some of the MPs on this list, and I don't know MP Gladu personally at all. I don't know what makes her tick, and we'll reach out to her. It'd be nice to get her on the show and talk to her. We'll add the interview request to the others that have recently crossed the floor. We're eager to talk to them as well, but you wonder maybe, and I've seen some speculation even in our live chat, people saying, well, maybe she's just decided this is going to be her last term. She's not going to have to go back in front of her constituents. She's not going to have to seek re-election. She's not going to have to justify the floor crossing, aside from maybe turning off her phone and putting her email onto auto reply for the next little bit. But if you're not looking to get reelected, there's really not that much risk. And then it comes down to the question of, would you rather serve in government or would you rather serve in opposition for the next 3 years? And maybe she just answered that question by crossing the floor. I don't know. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll continue to keep an eye on this. I'm just thinking and looking to make a judgment call. I know that we said we were going to talk a lot about Iran. Maybe we should for a couple of minutes, but this is proving to be probably the longest episode of Real Talk that we've ever had, just because there's a lot of ground to cover. Obviously, with the education minister out of the gates. If you're just joining our live stream, Demetrios Nicolaides joining us earlier. And then, of course, there's been a lot going on, including an exclusive with Dolph Lundgren leading up to NorthwestFest, which was super cool. Why don't we do sort of a Cole's Notes version of what went down, and as we progress through through this week. We've got 2 more episodes coming. We can dig in more fulsome fashion to understand what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz and what's happening with a 2-week ceasefire and who's on board and who's impacted and who's not. Like, is Israel pulling back in Lebanon, as an example? I know that's a question a lot of people are wondering. But I thought it was interesting as the president announced this 2-week ceasefire and confirming that the United States military would not be basically wiping an entire civilization off the map like the president had vowed to do on Easter Sunday. Just a wild series of posts on the Sunday and Monday from the president, profane. Some are describing them to be unhinged. But not everybody feels that way. Why don't we get the Laura Ingraham response on Fox News? This was just shortly after that deadline had arrived, and the Americans, by way of a post from the president, from the White House, I should say, had announced this 2-week ceasefire. And the Fox News host, one of the more well-known and well-followed conservative pundits in the United States, Laura Ingraham, described it as a big win. Here she is.
It looks like Trump ultimately hits the home run here, takes it to the brink. Iran blinks, and now it's just a matter of time. They're going to wrap up these details, notwithstanding the Iranian PR they're trying to put out tonight, which is obviously ridiculous.
Okay.
Well,
so
when will the Democrats and some Republicans ever learn that the rhetoric he uses is done for a reason, and it works, and they fall for it every single time? As you noted earlier in this show, I was shocked when everyone said, "Oh, he wrote such terrible things on Easter." He knows what he's doing, and that's where we are, and why we're where we are tonight.
Okay, so that's Matt Towery. He's a pollster, a political analyst, talking to Laura Ingraham. They're describing it as a big win. The language from the president used intentionally to achieve that goal, to get to the point where the United States got to, which is this ceasefire. But, Senator Chris Murphy, for example, out of Connecticut, not convinced. As a matter of fact, he describes it as quite the opposite. If Laura Ingraham describes this as a win, Murphy says that the United States gave up ground, made concessions that were never an option in the first place. In other words, it's a big loss. Here's the other side of the conversation.
Who knows what's going on? Donald Trump lies every single day. Clearly, he's not telling the truth. But if you accept even part of the Iranian statement, Donald Trump has agreed to give Iran control of the Strait of Hormuz. That is extraordinary. If you go deeper into the statement from the Iranian National Security Council, they claim that Trump has also agreed to Iran's right to enrichment, to suspend all sanctions against Iran, and to allow Iran to keep their missile program, their drone program, and their nuclear program. Now, who knows if any of that is true, but if at the very least this agreement gives Iran the right to control the strait, that is cataclysmic for the world. And it is just stunning that that's where we have gotten to, that Donald Trump took a military action that has apparently, at least for the time being, given Iran control over a critical waterway that they did not have control over before the war began. So it just doesn't sound like there's actually an agreement, because what Trump is saying is totally different than what the Iranians are saying. But if Iran has the strait permanently now, what an error, what a miscalculation this entire endeavor was.
An error and a miscalculation. So that's the take from Senator Chris Murphy. Senator Ed Markey, I don't know if he goes further. You can tell me what you think about this. This guy's been on Capitol Hill since like the 1970s. He's seen a lot. And the junior senator out of Massachusetts basically saying that this is now up to his fellow lawmakers, and essentially this is up now to the American people to do something about what they're seeing out of the Oval Office. This is dramatically different from what you heard about on Fox News, but here's Senator Ed Markey on MS Now.
Donald Trump has surrendered, not the Iranians. And what he has been doing over the last several days is an impeachable offense. He has threatened a genocide against a nation. He has threatened to end a civilization. He has threatened to use nuclear weapons against a country that does not have nuclear weapons. All of these are impeachable offenses, and he must be brought to justice. The House and Senate should be brought back into session. There should be articles of impeachment brought against him by the Democrats in the House of Representatives. We need to make Donald Trump accountable for what he has just done in the name of the American people. And I think this is going to be a defining moment for the Congress, for the American people. We cannot allow Donald Trump, in control of nuclear weapons, to be invoking this madman theory of the destruction of a civilization in the name of the American people without him being brought to accountability. The impeachment process must begin.
The impeachment process must begin. That's U.S. Senator Ed Markey, describing this as a Trump surrender. Which is pretty significant, to say the very least. Alberta Ganger says, another win in the American history books, just like Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Sure. There's a lot of thoughts here in our chat about what this means and what the tie-in is for Canada. The Prime Minister, of course, echoing what we heard from Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand as well, the same sort of a thing where they basically said, what you would expect any sane leader to say, which is, like, paraphrased, threats to wipe out an entire civilization must not be made, including from the most powerful people on planet Earth. I just thought that it was absolutely bonkers. And that's sort of where I've landed on this one, Johnny. I don't know about you, but in watching all of this develop, in particular the couple of posts from the president on Easter Sunday and then the Monday to follow, the threats to wipe out an entire civilization. It's so... I find myself that it's almost like you don't have the words because it just feels so bonkers. You feel a bit stunned about it all. But you look at that and you go, this can't possibly be real. This has to be bluffing. This has to be bluster, because no world leader, at least none since, I don't know, in the last 50, 60, 70, 80 years, has ever spoken so straightforwardly, so boldly about wiping out a civilization. Yeah. And I think that's probably why, I don't know, I didn't watch too much of it. I didn't really want to give it the click, but you've even got like Alex Jones yesterday saying Trump's got to be taken out of office. He's losing a big part of his MAGA base, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, so Real Talkers, let us know what you think about this to talk@RyanJesperson.com. We'll pick this up in future episodes. We knew that this one was going to be a long one. We appreciate everybody that found your way through to it, and we're never offended if you skip around to the stuff that interests you most. A reminder, you can always check out the episode descriptions for time codes and links to a lot of what we're talking about. As we wrap this episode, I want to thank you so much for being such a good friend of the show and remind you that the Ben Stelter Foundation is still looking for registrants to their Hearts and Hands Poker Tournament. This goes April 16th and 17th. This is going to be a wonderful fundraiser for the Ben Stelter Center for Proton Therapy and Neuroscience. Join us at Pure Casino Yellowhead, April 16th. Register at benstelterfoundation.com.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out RyanJesperson.com.